Welcome everyone on Zoom. I hope you hear us and we're about ready to get started. Greetings to you. There are name tags at the table. Please put your name on it and post it and be ready for conversation later on. Greetings, I am Jerry Hoffman, Pastor Emeritus at Nativity Lutheran Church in St. Anthony, Minnesota. Welcome to the third conversation at Nativity about Christian nationalism, which is a political movement that seeks to gain power and control of our country. It seeks to replace democratic principles and institutions and give control to those who share the correct heritage, beliefs, and policies. It ignores Christian theology and uses Christian symbols for its own purposes. Its center is American nationalism, not Jesus. It is only within the last several months that I, among others at Nativity, have become awakened to the reality of the threat this movement presents as we read and discussed two books. The first was The Power Worshippers: Inside the Dangerous Rise of the Religious Nationalism by Catherine Stewart. The second was Red State Christians: A Journey into White Nationalism and the Wreckage It Leaves Behind by Angela Danker. Recently, Pastor Clemens Seefeld has publicly indicated his opposition to his tenets and is very supportive of our efforts to bring a greater awareness at Nativity. On Sunday, October 8th, we viewed a public video of a seminar at Georgetown University that featured a leader in the Baptist community who is working diligently to confront the threats of Christian nationalism, and Bishop Michael Curry, the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church in America. They asserted Christian nationalism is a corruption of Christianity. Christians must refute such ideologies. Bishop Curry urged Christians to speak out. Silence is complicity, which creates a context in which something like that can grow. One of the most powerful tools Christians have, he said, is the Bible itself. Lift up the text of the New Testament and let Jesus talk. Anything that claims to be Christian, if it doesn't match up, then we say, well, that's not Christianity. On Sunday, October the 15th, the Reverend Elizabeth A. Eaton, presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, entered a conversation via Zoom with us at Nativity. She urged us to stand firmly behind efforts to confront Christian nationalism. She asserted that as Lutherans, our faith teaches us everyone is created in God's image and commands us to love one another. As Americans, we value our system of government and the good that can be accomplished in our constitutional democracy. We need to join together, be rooted in our faith, and take action to confront Christian nationalism as a persistent threat to both our religious communities and our democracy. She called upon us to reject this damaging political ideology and invited us to join together to confront this threat to our faith and to our nation. There's copies of this on your table if you'd like to have a copy for yourself. Next.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Emeritus Jerry Hoffman. It's very well spoken and written, right? Yeah, you can clap. I think you did a great job. So I'm Deacon Kyle Soderberg here at Nativity. Thanks for being here. He, him pronouns. Today, my understanding, this is mostly like a workshop in community to take all the information that we've heard and learned so far and see what collective action opportunities we may have to implement it, you know, in the short term, midterm, far down the road. So it's brainstorming, it's networking, it's conversation, and it should be a lot of fun. There is coffee, decaf, and regular over there. We had several gracious volunteers bring some sweet treats for everybody. If you need anything else that we don't already have set out, please let somebody who looks like they're assisting know, and we'll figure that out for you. Handouts are over here. I believe Eileen got name tags. Great, perfect. We'll get to the papers on your table and the Post-its later on in our program. So I'm going to do just the very simplest of all land acknowledgements, a prayer, and then we'll start our program. So my land acknowledgement is just to remind everybody that we're on Indigenous land, and it's our responsibility not just to acknowledge it, but then to work with Indigenous communities and Native people here in Minnesota and across the US to make sure that they're thriving, and to do that equitably by asking them, what do you need and what role can I play that you'd be comfortable with? And there's a lot of opportunities to do that. All right, so will you join me in prayer? Thank you, God, for gathering us here today. We look to walk with you in this journey and learning how to play our role in being the counter narrative of Christian nationalism as we look to live into Jesus's loving gospel narrative. And as we continue to gather in community, to learn from each other, to feel the Holy Spirit in your presence, and to continue to grow as one body of Christ. In your name we pray. Amen. He's hiding. Laying back.
John, I'm not here by myself. I didn't think we were anyway. Just one comment about the handouts first. The ones on the upper level are ones from the first week, October 9th, if you didn't get them, or 8th, I guess it was, whatever. The bottom one is a new handout, and it gives a little more information about action and how you can identify it in the community when you hear somebody speaking or hear an organization talking. So I guess I'm in charge. We have three questions that we have developed. And we're gonna start with the first question, and we're gonna give you at least a good 10 minutes to discuss. And you can write some stuff on those papers as well if you think it's something. And then we're asking people to report back by table to kind of what you ended up kind of talking about. So maybe picking somebody that's willing to do that. So the first question: what further education of Christian nationalism is needed in our community?
Them some examples, right?
Oh,
To
are we gonna?
raise the ball rolling. And we may want to start by just saying, what do you know at your table? Since some people may have come to all 3 sessions, somebody maybe just 1 or 2. So do we want to start with just maybe letting them talk about what they already know, and then they'll learn from each other? And then
At the tables.
Yeah.
Is it okay you're not with the mic?
Well, I don't know. I'm just
No,
asking.
no, your part. Okay.
Okay, those of you who haven't been here, you can, the introduction is a pretty clear overview, but some of you who've been involved more than that probably have a better idea, or even you went online this week or the week before and researched some of the things that are going on. What we're interested in, first of all, the 3 of us don't have all the answers. We have been working on this since May, so we know only a couple months more than you know, which isn't a lot, okay? But we're very motivated, and we're motivated enough to do these 3 programs. So our goal today is to talk amongst ourselves. What else can we do to get the message out? What is, in other words, education? Then what do we need to move forward? And then number 3, are you interested in being involved? So let's start with this first. I'm not sure where even I'm going to be in all this, but as you talk amongst yourselves and maybe share your concerns or maybe non-concern, whatever the case may be, let's focus on furthering the education in our community. And that's not just here. It could be a church, it could be the Twin Cities, it could be the region. So discuss with each other, maybe for 10 or so minutes, where you see this, whether you think it's important, and should there be further education in this area. Thank you. Okay, folks, if we wrap it up in maybe 20 to 30 seconds, and then we'll just pull the tables. If you have a couple of ideas on furthering the education that we've started here, we can explore that. I went to a couple of tables and they were really great. Good ideas. Yes.
Family and friends about it.
Don't be shy.
Start by talking to family and friends about it. People you know. Start by just talking to them about it so you can raise the awareness.
Steve. He's got a list.
Yeah, we may have started a little bit further back, but we started talking about the distinction between Christianity and Christian nationalism, and what we wrote down here, or what Sherry wrote down. That's how our elevator goes. Every time I get on the elevator, it says Sherry. Anyway, what distinguishes us as Christians from Christian nationalism? That's the first thing we need to decide how we're gonna define that distinction. Then we talked about the removal of books from schools and where that fits in the spectrum of Christian nationalism, and where it fits with just your position in any particular subject. And then we talked about distinguishing Christians from other religious prejudice. And then that was the end of our time.
Thanks, Steve. One of the questions that came up at a table that I was at was, what is a Christian? I think that's a great question. Some people I know talk about being a follower of Jesus. Some people don't even claim themselves as Christians as much as a follower of Jesus. And that's something that I subscribe to. And maybe that's a good marker. But for me, it is. I'm not personally into judging other people's Christian beliefs or Christianity, but I guess a question could be asked, and that was part of the discussion the first week was you have Jesus and you have Christian nationalists. Do these things match? And if they don't match, then maybe you're on the road to understanding what Christian nationalism is. Have any comments from here? The ladies.
My name's Dan. I would just share something that I see as a similarity. There's an organization that I joined earlier this year. It's called Braver Angels, and one of the founders was a professor from the University of Minnesota. And the point of that organization is to meet and form alliances, and it's to meet with people who, they call it red and blue, conservative and liberal viewpoints, but it's really to have conversations to restore respectful discourse. And one of the things when I went to my first forum about over a year ago, it was at St. Stephen's in Bloomington. One of my hopes was to have churches form alliance with each other and maybe have conversation groups similar, modeled after Braver Angels. Braver Angels doesn't really talk about, religious or faith-based issues, and they definitely don't talk about Christian nationalism, but they talk about all the other things that are polarizing us as a people. And so that would be something I would think would be beneficial to the church communities in the metro, to form alliances with each other rather than just everybody kind of do their own thing.
As my wife would say, get out of my head. That's exactly what I think. We need to gather with others of the same interest, right?
Our Zoom room, oh, that rhymes.
Turnout, but many churches in the inner city, would only have maybe 8 people. So it's different, to get churches like that to pull together.
Thank you.
Well, how did you find out about Braver Angels? I've never in my whole life heard about it. Where would you find out about something like that?
No, it was, someone told me. So
Networking.
it was, I showed up to be a visitor at a church similar like this, and then someone I was talking to asked me if I'd heard of it, and I said no, and she said, well, we have meetings here. There's only 2 churches in the Twin Cities that have chapters, but they struggle because part of the covenant with Braver Angels is to be an actual alliance. You have to have like a 50-50 or 60-40 ratio of your members so that, you know, they can talk about their differences. And the problem that we have in the city of St. Paul and Minneapolis is the chapter is 90%, you know, liberal blue thinkers. And so there's just not enough concern. So we're trying to actually figure out, how do we get more conservative left right leaning people to come in and talk and share what the divisive issues are and have a conversation. So that's the path we're on. But yeah.
At an anniversary party.
Oh,
We were, Julie mentioned talking to your friends and neighbors, and we were at a 50th anniversary party last night. Not ours, but we were talking with some people, and as we started talking about Christian nationalism. Of course, we agreed with them because they were friends for a long time, but they mentioned Braver Angels. And in our discussion, I was trying to think of the name of that group that Betsy mentioned. So if you talk with friends, you know, people that you even agree with, sometimes you find out that they know things you don't know yet. And it can, like you said, somebody told me about it, and then you tell somebody else, and pretty soon you learn things.
That might email. So if anyone wants to know about it. I can share, because I'm on the email list. I can tell you how to register.
Personal networking. Is that a night? Thank you. We have a report from this table. Just question, okay. Hi, Jean.
Hi. Good morning. I'm Jeannie Voigt, and I think the thing that we all agreed upon, we need to get out and vote. School board elections are coming now, and there's some people running that we maybe don't want to be on those school boards, so check it out and make sure you know who you're voting for. It's really, really important. So any other, and just, I don't know how we would do this, but networking, you know, TV, media, all the different kinds of media that's available to us. I don't know how we personally can do that, but and then as we were talking, the other thing I thought about is talking to our legislatures and telling them how important this is and seeing if there can't be something done that way as well. Anything else?
Thank you.
Excuse me. You talked a little bit about personal networking and getting the information out to family and friends. And I just wanted to share this little story that, you know, before this whole thing started, I mentioned to my son that we were going to, you know, what the church was doing. And one of the questions you need to be just prepared for a response when you mention this to them is, what are they going to, you know, what kind of questions are they going to have for you? And one of the questions my son had is, well, what does this have to do with Jesus? And you got to prepare to answer that question. And I think I was. And by being here, I think I'm able to pass on more information to what this thing is all about.
Thank you.
I forgot one. Bobby had mentioned, I think the church now is having a church discussion about a particular book called Sweetgrass, and that maybe the next book around, or there could also be one on Christian nationalism in the church. Is that what?
Thank you.
John, I have a quick or two quick or one request and a question. I put it in chat, but I haven't had a response. Will someone be compiling the table groups and or the Zoom group, small breakout group responses this morning, or should we all be taking notes? And then the request that I have, number 2, is if people who are at the tables could please identify yourself as you're talking, it would just kind of help us know in Zoom, since we can't see you stand up and talk. Thank you.
For those of you who don't recognize Margot's voice, that is we're doing both of those things, Margot. Thank you.
At this table, there were I'm Jerry. I talked before. Yeah, Vince. At this table, there was indicated there's a lot of resources on YouTube, and we ought to go through YouTube and pick out some excellent resources that's found there and publish that so other people can go to YouTube to find that information. There is, I think there's a person called Rolf Olson. We can congregation has 2 presentations, and that is maybe a good option for next year sometime. There was a request. We would like Glenn Seefeld to have a sermon about this. Can ask him that he would direct particularly that sermon. That's not my suggestion, so I don't tell that pastor what to do.
There you have it.
And then the issue, what's happening in our own synod, the Minneapolis area synod? What leadership has our bishop of the synod doing? And maybe we need to put pressure on her to act and give some leadership. More.
Thank you, Jerry. We've got some comments and questions from the chat.
Okay, so this is Deacon Kyle, and we didn't think that our technology was going to allow audio two-way communication with Zoom, but Margot proved to us that it can. So I'm going to read a few things, and then we'll let people online chime in if I missed anything from chat. So from one of the tables, they talked about identifying businesses and products that support Christian nationalism, so they might consider boycotting or abstaining from supporting them. Deacon Kyle's words, I would say like organizations. There's in particular like nonprofit organizations that say their mission is literally to combine Christianity and federal law. So, I mean, they're pretty explicit. So businesses and items for sure, but organizations, there's a lot of not necessarily shell companies, but being so organized, they set up platforms and structures to support their work and their mission and organize it. So keep an eye out for that. And then as it came up a few times too, take a closer look at our school boards and city councils, look for opportunities for kind of inclusive thinkers, so to speak. And then another one was their table or the small group in Zoom was wondering about data regarding the prevalence of Christian nationalism in our communities, such as from Pew Research. And I think, you know, the idea is just to understand how pervasive this way of thinking really is, because we're talking about it, right? But Nativity just started talking about it in the last couple months. You can find stuff online, but again, you don't necessarily know how embedded it is. That's my understanding of kind of the wondering. And then another one is like to know best ways to respond to concerns, which I think is going to be part of our program in the near future here. In particular, if somebody lives in a red state, and this person in particular is wondering if their congressional representatives are in fact Christian nationalists, which I think sometimes they would maybe even admit to it in their bios if they don't use that language in particular. And something that I've learned from this experience so far is that a lot of people might know what Christian nationalism is when they see it, but are not yet familiar with that language or terminology. And so I think that's on both sides of the equation. There may be Christian nationalists that don't identify that way because they're not familiar with the language, even though they act and believe that way. And people who may not believe in the message and mission of Christian nationalism, but don't understand how it's being organized and what the label is.
That data is available on some books that have been written. We didn't get into that area, but there are 6 questions you can ask yourself or your friends. It will help you understand if you maybe don't understand what Christian nationalism is and you're realizing you're leaning toward it or whatever. So we can share that, I suppose. We have everybody's contacts if you want that. Oh, does somebody out there?
I'm just going to finish the real quick and then we'll circle back. I promise, Bobby, I won't forget you. One of the questions that came up in Zoom too, so all 3 recordings, they need to be edited, but they'll be on our website on one web page with all the handouts and information that we have available. And the reason why we had people register for the events in person and online is so that we can have your contact information to share out what we've learned and additional resources. But then also we wanted to limit like bots or spammers or people who may wanted to cause trouble, which so far, I mean, good troublemakers abound, but bad troublemakers. So we can let Bobby speak, and then I know Betty and maybe somebody else online wants to unmute themselves and follow up with a few thoughts as well. So we'll circle back to the Zoomers.
I'm just concerned about the time at some point here. Not with you, but okay.
I would just like to encourage you, if it is still available on the website with past sermons, that we go back to July 4, when Ben Shorey, Pastor Ben, gave a wonderful, wonderful sermon on explaining the difference between Christian nationalism and patriotism.
I would second that. It was excellent. So are there a couple more?
I just wanted to mention, if you're concerned about your school board, if you go to the education site like St. Anthony, like I live in Mounds View, so I would go to the Mounds View Education Association. If you went to the St. Anthony Education Association, you would probably find the people that they recommend for school board, so that they have significantly talked with them and realize that they are for the freedoms of children, not for the constrictions of children. It would be, you'd have to look up the school board or the St. Anthony Education Association.
Good point. Unmute yourself on Zoom if you want to speak. Yeah, I mean, we're more than halfway through the morning.
Zoomers, do you have any questions?
Yeah, this is Gary Kimball. Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear you fine, Gary.
Okay. I just wanted to add 2 different points that came up in our group, largely in my urging, I'd suggest. I think there's a backdrop to a lot of what we're talking about. We're talking about specific actions, but I'm wondering, what is it that conservative Christians believe as Christians that allows them or puts them in a position of asking or taking actions that they're taking? And number 2, what do we know about culture and religious overlap? There's a suggestion that culture influences religion, and we've also seen, at least I have, suggestions that religion influences culture. So there's this backdrop, I think, to the things that we need to understand about what they believe and why they believe it, that informs what our actions could be and maybe should be.
Thank you, Gary. Betty?
I just want to mention that from our Zoom room, 3 things were brought up. The first is the terms used by the Christian nationalists. How can we familiarize ourselves with that so that we know how to respond? Secondly, and I think this was mentioned, but I want to mention it again, products that, and businesses that support Christian nationalism so that we do not support them. We discussed Hobby Lobby, Koch brothers. Of course, Koch brothers has many subsidiaries, and Chick-fil-A, I think, were the three that we mentioned. And thirdly, and this was touched on also, look at your politicians and contact those legislations. I can talk too.
Thank you, Betty. Any other Zoomer questions, comments? Okay, before we move on to the next, we've pretty much talked about item number 2, what is needed to move forward. We have some ideas anyway, and we will publish all of these based on what you all have written down. Just a quick, there was a question about how to identify Christian nationalists, and the people who have done the evaluation of how much and how pervasive Christian nationalism is have come up with 6 questions that they use. This is very brief. And I'll just read through them. Federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation. Federal government should advocate Christian values. Federal government should enforce strict separation of church and state. That's a questionable one because we believe, I think we believe that too. The federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public places. That's like courthouses and civic spaces, not churches, because they're private. The success of the United States is part of God's plan, kind of that manifest destiny sort of thinking. And the federal government should allow prayer in public schools. So people that say yes to all of these things are likely to lean toward that. And at the far end, it's authoritarianism, and it could go all the way to, you know, women should not be involved in government, and some of the more out there conservative views. So that's kind of what it might be.
That was what I was referring to a couple minutes ago, and that's what we'll share those questions. And the separation of church and state was an issue that the bishop discussed. She explained what that means, and actually the word separation of church and state is not in our Constitution, the concept, but it's not worded that way. And she explained it very well. So when you have a chance to listen to that again, look for it.
We've done pretty much what is needed to move forward. And if we could go into our small groups and talk about what kind of involvement you see yourself in, and what you might be willing to do. Besides talk to each other and your neighbors and your family, which is important too.
I was reminded that you have stickies at your table. So if you come up with something that you're want to put on there about how you might want to be involved, that would be great. And you could put your contact information with it, and then we'll gather those at the end. Isn't required, and maybe nobody will fill it out, but we hope some do, about how you might want to be involved and what your name is and your contact.
Okay, if we can wrap it up, please. We're gonna close Zoom rooms. I don't know how you turn the dial or hit a button or what. Oh. Just as a reminder, keep writing down any ideas you have on the papers that you've started. We're going to kind of assume, and you can always opt out, but if you're here and you're participating, you're probably interested in this topic, and we're not going to fill your inbox, but we may be sending things to you that may be of interest. If this parish, that this church goes beyond this. Right now, there's just kind of 4 of us, these 2 guys and us. And of course, Kyle has been instrumental. But if you're interested in a bigger working group and getting together periodically to come up with some strategies or implement them, please indicate that interest. You can talk to us or write something down. Are they back? Just got back. Great.
I looked up the website. It's $12 a year if you want to join, and then they'll keep you appraised of their events and stuff.
Better angels.
Yeah, Braver Angels.
Braver Angels, thank you.
Or something.
Well, we got the attorneys involved. Okay. Anybody have any general comments? We're not going to go table to table, but if you have anything that you'd like to offer, we'll open up the floor to whatever comments you might have. Steve?
I'm Steve, and Sherry wrote down 2 things here that I just want to talk about. We have a sheet that some of you may not have that we have, but one thing we might be able to do is post this information on our community bulletin board if we get approval from the organization that is responsible for the community. That's one thing we could do. Another thing that Rob is suggesting, and we all agree with, is that voting intelligently is important, and resources on the candidate information is very valuable. And I am not going to be able to do that because I'm not intelligent. So there you go.
I'm not sure how to respond to that. And Sherry, you're sure getting a lot of press here. Any other comments, questions?
Couple things. As far as books, I am Megan McLeod. A couple ideas about books. Is it possible to buy a few of those books and put them in our library so they can take them out? As far as instead of us buying them all the time. And then secondly, I know I talked to my husband about other churches who have already started a few ideas on Christian nationalism, and possibly connecting with those churches and seeing if they have committees set up, where are they at right now? Are they doing anything proactive that we too could piggyback on and use some of their ideas? And I would be willing to call some of those churches if I worked in collaboration with you and gave me information on what to say. But really, we'll see. I mean, there's got to be some ideas out there already. So.
Thank you, Megan. Question from Darcy. Darcy, go ahead, please, on Zoom.
Thank you for responding to my hands up. One thing that I did in our community with our school board elections is we did not or removed all voting sites from any church, mosque, or synagogue. So all our voting parts are civic organizations. And the reason why we did that, our public schools has a very religiously diverse, and we felt that it just doesn't look good to have a picture of Jesus over the voting booth. So I think that's one way of confronting Christian nationalism, is by taking our voting booths out of our churches. That's just kind of a basic thing. And it's been very effective, and we don't have the problems with school board elections like a lot of communities are having right now, just because of that one main thing. Where you vote matters.
Hello, this is Clara. I was wondering if there are any, since the first 2 lectures are really adamant on knowing scripture, I wonder if there are any like Bible studies that are kind of focused on this area, and if we should host that activity at all.
Let's follow up to what the bishop said last week. She joked about it. She said when she was a pastor in churches, she had a hard time getting people to come to Bible studies. She said, I tried first thing in the morning, I tried in the evening, I tried during the week. So I think that's a very, very good comment.
She also volunteered to do one for us. She also volunteered to do one for us.
Yeah, that would be cool. Remotely, probably, but
She laughed after, so I don't
yeah, I'll follow up with the, did other people have any? I think there's been some excellent comments that lead to other ideas. When they mentioned the media piece was one idea, I remember Amanda, I forgot her last name. She's the Tyler, that's the Baptist person that helped a few years ago establish Christians Against Christian Nationalism. She said that they struggle to get mainline media to cover it. And she has felt that in recent months or year that it's been covered a little bit, but it's a battle apparently, because the other, I don't know why it is, it's a battle.
I'll just mention that I've been following a website. Oh, Pete Bondi. I've been following a website called Faithful America, and that's another against Christian nationalism website. And they send out emails. If you sign up with them, you'll get an email every other day from them about what's going on. And often I will sign the petition to, support what they're doing. And they've been very effective. So.
It's one of our 2 resources. It's one of the 2 websites we suggest.
Thank you. I'm Eileen McCormick, and I just wanted to get it into the record. John Marty, who is the state senator who represents Roseville, and I don't know how expansive his area is, but he has formed a caucus, a legislative caucus called the Secular Caucus. And it was formed exactly as a counter to the Christian nationalist effort. So if you Google his name, John Marty, and secularism, information about what he is doing and attempting to do will come up. And yeah, all right, John, that's right.
Eileen's husband mentioned that there's Democrats and Republicans in that caucus. It's not just because Johnny Marty is a Democrat. It's the caucus is both parties. Well, I'm looking, it's 10 o'clock, so.
All right, so just some quick follow-ups. We'll see if anybody else from the team wants to share before we close. But thank you so much for being here, both online and in person. Feel free to give yourselves a round of a hand. Feel free to keep clapping for the volunteer leaders that are lined up over here, and Nativity staff that aren't down here, but have been instrumental in assisting us, from AV to hospitality to communications to preaching on this subject. All right, so a couple key housekeeping things. So we have mostly everybody's email. Again, if you want to be on our mailing list, please make sure that you write it down. If there's anything you particular want to do or explore doing, write that down with your email and we'll circle back to you. Online, you can email me or drop it in chat, as we mentioned. We will get all 3 recordings edited so that they're accessible with all of our handouts that we've referenced on Nativity's website as soon as we can. So in that way, we can share with you just one link with all the resources, and then you can also share that link out. So that will be to everybody who's registered online and in person. And if you're not sure how you may want to be involved, again, just participating like this, conversations, educational opportunities are really important. It's not always just direct action or service, but continue to discern that. You can email anybody on the team or come find us when you think you might know how you may want to be involved, even if it's just being invited to participate in additional education opportunities. And if you want to conversate with us, and we can help you discern, how this is speaking to you and how you may want to stay engaged. So I think that's it for me. Anybody else on the team?
If you are connected in a particularly meaningful way with anybody at your table and they're signed up on the sheet of paper, take out that smartphone of yours and take a picture of all of those contacts. Then you can talk to them whenever you'd like to. Thank you for coming.